Our studio guest today is filmmaker Blondie Singh, associate of Navjeevan Films, Bombay, and Sony Khan Productions, Los Angeles. Blondie Singh has made feature films in both English and in Hindi, and some of his Hindi hits were Do Anjaane, Mr.Natwarlal, Balram, and Bollywood, just to mention a few. We are truly delighted to have him in the studio with us today. Over now to Shan.
Thank you, Jaya. As Jaya just mentioned, we are delighted to have Blondie on the air with us. Blondie, welcome to the show.
Pleasure. Real
Blondie,
pleasure.
our hearty congratulations to you. I've been carefully following your progress. You've done some very, very interesting things in the feature film industry. Mind you, and I'm not surprised at all. You know, this runs in your blood. It's the third generation for you. Your great-grandfather was one of the pioneers in the film industry in India. Tell me about this venture of yours, Bollywood. Everybody's talking about it. Tell us about this film.
Well, first, Shan, let me also congratulate you, since you're also a second-generation film wala, as I would say, and now you have gone into television, which is like a cousin of cinema itself.
Thank you.
And you also had a very interesting career. Just seems to be our lot, This is just how it goes. Bollywood is based on Shashi Tharoor's book, Show Business. And Shashi happens to be the executive secretary to the Secretary General of the United Nations, Mr. Kofi Annan. And one would wonder, when does he get time to write a novel? Which he does. He takes the time out. And the book actually was reviewed in the New York Times book review in the front page, which actually is quite a distinction. And it got rave reviews. And I happened to be lying in my bathtub one day, and my wife bought me the New York Times book review. And I'm lying in the bathtub, and the first thing I looked at was, it said, "Hooray for Bollywood." And that's actually where the spark began. And I was lucky it was not much of a spark because I was in my bathtub. I could have got electrocuted. But that's where it began. And what was most interesting about show business was that it was like a tridosha.
Yeah.
It talked about Indian cinema, it talked about Indian religion, it talked about Indian politics. Now, I pretty much kept the politics and religion out of it because, that I left for a different time and place. Hopefully when I do the first Indian musical in Canada, and I left it for that. And I kept the cinema solely for the Bollywood segment of it, which depicts Indian cinema. And it's a spoof, and some of the press, for example, I think the San Francisco Chronicle, or I think the Village Voice, said that it's very difficult to make a spoof on a spoof, but that I was pretty successful. And what I did is I took, there are actually 4 films within the film, and somehow it was coincidental that Pulp Fiction came up about the same time and had a similar kind of a story structure, which was like 4 films within a film.
Yeah.
And not that Torrentino and I knew each other or knew that we were working parallel, but and those 4 small films within a film are actually the formula films that Indian cinema relies on. Actually there was a 5th one which I omitted because the film had got too long, so I had to edit it out. But we in Indian cinema rely on a particular formula, and one of them is like a James Bond kind of a formula. And we use the film Godambo to, and I actually played Godambo in that little segment. Godambo is the villain, actually.
Right.
And it was a spoof on something like Mr. India or something, and then we did this. There's a second film within it, it's called Judai, which is a classic Indian formula where the 2 twins are born and separated, and then they sort of circumvent.
Lost and found.
Yeah, the whole world, and then they sort of come back again.
Yeah.
And then we had the third segment. The third film was Dil Ek Killa, the triangle, the 2 girls and the 1 guy. The usual.
Right.
And the 4th one was actually Mechanic. This is kind of film that our heroes make when they have political aspirations.
Right.
They sort of show themselves playing a real regular guy, and how he can solve the problems and etc. And so the audience can identify with him.
Right.
And the 5th one was, as the guru in the picture aptly put it, He says more people go to see these kind of films than they go to temple, you know, which is the mythological picture. And that aptly was called Kalki, you know, destruction of the world and so on and so forth. And this guy had to come on a white charger, and you know, so these are basically formula films that we rely on, and we make maybe 800 movies a year,
right?
And they don't diverge very far from this particular formula,
right?
Ready, 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 ready.
The movie cameras are rolling in India 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. Here, a director hoses down his actors with a larger-than-life rainstorm.
Ready.
Being larger than life all the time is what Indian movie making is about. Whether it's the lights, the camera, or the
Action! Action!
Welcome to Bollywood, an over-the-top world where the heroes all love their mothers.
हमेशा हमेशा के लिए.
The villains make Jason and Freddy Krueger look like Boy Scouts. Duels to the death that seem to last forever. Anything can happen in an Indian movie, preferably 3 or 4 times. If you want to know why India is the movie capital of the world, just stroll on down to an Indian movie theater. If a few million people see a Hollywood movie once, it's a big hit. But in India, a hit movie is seen over and over again by hundreds of millions of people. Producer-director Bikram Blondie Singh makes movies now, but he still loves to go to the theater.
What do these people expect when they come to the movies?
Well,
they want?
they expect entertainment, pure and simple. They want to be entertained. They want all their emotions triggered.
In a nation where television is rare, this is how Indians get away from it all. Each day, 14 million people go to the movies, where they endure long lines and constant crowds. This is the turnout for the 10 a.m. show. Even at this time of day, the temperature inside the theater can rise to almost 100 degrees.
How much do they pay the ushers in here?
They pay them monthly at 20 bucks a month.
That's some job, ushering in here.
Yeah, they're right, for $5 a week.
Do they have like a thing at the beginning of the movies that says everyone has to be quiet?
No, you can't enforce quietness in the Indian theater. No,
you can't enforce
no,
quietness.
you can't enforce quietness. And you're allowed to express your emotions as you see what's going on the screen.
It doesn't take long for things to get going. Within minutes, a damsel is in distress, usually a wet damsel.
Now the good guy's gonna come. Yeah.
And in a Bollywood movie, your good guy never just strolls in through the front door.
What an entrance.
Yeah, right. Yeah, he's the bad guy.
Bad guy. Definite bad guy.
Before you know it, you're swept up in it all. You've made it to Bollywood.
Ooh.
Oh, God.
Your friends must have been pretty excited with the kind of coverage that you had from CNN and major networks like this, the American networks.
Yeah, for an independent filmmaker, there was a lot of accolade actually.
Based on that, it's fascinating. India is a country, as you said yourself, movie-going population is a tremendous population. Millions of people go to movies.
That's
it's
right.
a common man's experience.
Absolutely.
Indian film industry traditionally are based on 3 obsessions: the taboo obsession, the omnipotent obsession, and the security obsession.
Right.
The taboo and the security obsession are almost identical. Basically, rich man's daughter falls in love with a poor man's son. It's a no-no, can't even date each other. Both parents, go against each other. Towards the end of the movie, they get married and they live happily ever after.
That's right. We want a happy ending as
Right,
usual. Yes.
absolutely. Tragedies don't work in
No,
Indian
no.
cinema, as you know.
We used to in the 50s actually.
Is that right?
Yes.
Interesting. The omnipotent obsession is, of course, very common in Indian cinema. The hero can never be defeated. The Indian Navy doesn't have enough submarines, but Indian heroes will be driving a submarine.
That's right.
And they'll be sending missiles up from there.
That's right.
And then they'll stand and they'll stop it with their bare hands.
That's right.
And so
and they can stop the 7th Fleet by themselves.
Absolutely.
Where's Arnold Schwarzenegger in this?
Absolutely. There's combination of bow and arrow, and then there is combination of bullets flying that they can hold with their hands.
That's right. How about and then the combination of magic?
Absolutely. And
Wow.
20 guys can be taken on by one guy.
That's right.
And it's a very common omnipotent obsession of the
Right.
Indian cinema. The hero can never be defeated. And the good aspect, of course, is that the hero always does good things.
Right.
You had an interesting analysis, because you've really thoroughly studied this. Tell us about this phenomenon in the Indian film industry.
Well, you see, people don't realize, Shan, that Indian cinema is really an integral part of Indian psyche. You know, it is as deep as religion or politics. And I would be bold enough to say that if there was no Indian cinema, we'd have a revolution in the country.
Interesting.
Yes, you know, there would be not a gentle revolution, but there'd be a bloody revolution. Because the frustration of the masses against the oppressive, unjust system is somehow seduced by the audience going, when they're totally frustrated and it's hot outside, it's 105 degrees or something, they go into a movie theater which is air conditioned. And they sit down and it's cool, and they watch the hero beat up the straw villain. And in that straw villain, they actually see the oppressive social order. And they see the hero triumphing over it. I mean, the hero has to triumph. Because that's what gives them that that good feeling. So when they come out, their fires are extinguished. Not only by the air conditioning, but by the hero's deeds.
Very interesting.
And so they come out and they feel really very good. And you know, and this doesn't happen individually. This happens collectively. Remember, there are almost like 14 or 15 million people going to the cinema every day. This is 15 million frustration people every. And if you compound the numbers, by the end of the year, it'll cross over 1 billion. And the politicians, by the way, in India don't give lip service to Indian cinema at all, but they want to share in its profits by levying entertainment tax, which is almost 100%. I mean, if a ticket is 10 rupees, entertainment tax is also 10 rupees. But if you tell them to accept this as an industry and have the banks finance us and so on and so forth, like in Hollywood, they don't want to hear about it. You know? But they want to. And they don't realize how much they are benefiting from this. And I make that a point actually in the film.
Another area that you very nicely dealt in your treatment of this film is that the need for escapism. You know, reality is bad enough, why should I tell the truth, they say. So Indian cinema is very much based on the fact that in certain aspects it is better to get away from that reality, and that formula has really worked well, because when a common man wants to forget and goes and sits in a theater, number one, 90-minute films don't run in India, as you know. You need a 3-hour film usually.
He feels shortchanged.
Yeah, exactly. So people need to have an intermission, usually about 1.5 to 2 hours in the film.
They want samosa and rasgulla and chai, you know.
So because of that, it's been the only form of community experience. It all started with the touring cinemas, where people really went in there and they sat for 3 hours, so one whole evening was properly spent, utilized. Is there a change in the tendency at the present time with the advent of television?
In the beginning, when television came in the forefront in Indian entertainment, it came like an invading army. You know, we felt, Genghis Khan was on our borders, and this is the cinema community that we were going to get decimated. You know, there was nothing, But it was an erroneous situation. I mean, we were unnecessarily trepidatious and frightened. We were nervous, but it had its impact. People got seduced by the accessibility of video and right in the living rooms. But after a while, the novelty wore off. Because big screen is big screen. You know, cinema experience is a cinema experience. It's when you go into a dark theater, you pretty much leave all your believability outside the door. I mean, and basically you're daydreaming in the daytime. And that television could not do. Because you got the bachas running up and down, and your wife is cooking in the kitchen. She was to come running and look at the scene, and your neighbors are sitting squatted in your living room, etc. and all. So there's a lot of distraction, and so television has its place, but no, it has. I don't think it had really made inroads into cinema. Though in the 80s, I think it did, when box office tickets fell to an all-time low. But now in the 90s, they're back again. People still want to go to the cinema. Now even the upper classes are going back to the cinema.
Blondie just mentioned about the upper class and the class system. I'm very delighted to show you a segment where I did an interview with the great man, the late great Raj Kapoor, and he spoke about the same phenomena that we are currently discussing, and I want you to listen to this as to what Raj Kapoor had to say about the common man and his passion for Indian cinema. Let's take a look at it. Blondie, I want you to watch this with me. Okay.
Same breath as Raj Kapoor, I love it.
Rajji, tell me, there was a very beautiful statement that you made, during the break when we were having sipping a cup of tea, about the uniqueness of the Indian audience, the mass audience for cinema. Tell us a little bit about this, sir.
I suppose you know that as of today, India produces more than about 730 or 40 films a year in all different languages. And it's a lot of film, a lot of material. Of course, quantity-wise, we have yet to achieve a lot quality-wise. But then here comes in this beautiful audience of this country. Now, to tell you something as to why, for instance, other medias have not been of any danger, major danger, of any consequence to the cinema industry is, leave aside big cities here in this country, a few of them, which is the entertainment for the millions of people of this country. They have no entertainment. And the only entertainment is cinema. And as I have always said, and I'll say it again to you, for your viewers, that if you don't cheat the audience, they're very kind to you. Don't make a fool of them. Don't take them for granted. What do they know? No. They know it. They may not be as intelligent or critical as other audiences, but for what they have come there, they know that they want to be entertained. Now, what is entertainment? To some, it may be a beautiful song. To some, it may be a beautiful dance number. To some, it might be an intellectual exercise of a play, of a drama, of something that gives him satisfaction intellectually and he identifies himself with the situation or characters. To others, it might be just giving vent to their pent-up emotions in a big fight. And he feels that he is the hero who has kicked about 50 people with a blow, and he claps and he shouts and he yells and he says, oh, lovely film, lovely film. Though the film might not have anything in it except, but it had this that gave him satisfaction. So that is one reason where many people have said, why do you have music in your films? Why do you have everything? It's a soapbox opera. It's a kind of a hodgepodge of everything. It is because to whom am I catering this? I am not making a film for drawing room conversation. I am making a film for the millions of this country to be entertained. So as I have said, that the Indian audience is the most gracious audience to be found anywhere in the world. They are kind. They'll do anything if you just satisfy them a little bit, make them happy, make them forget their daily problems that they face and confront in living in modern socio-economic system of governments and people and laws. He feels, and the bureaucracy and all goes into that one envelope, and he feels, for that brief moment, he's forgotten everything. That's entertainment to him. He goes back home, he loves his children, he loves his wife.
Raj Kapoor was one of the greatest men in the Indian cinema, in the history of Indian cinema. Exactly.
Yes,
You know, he was seen as the Charlie Chaplin of India.
Right.
You know, he was the, you know, he spoke about the little man, and he imitated him quite a bit.
That's right.
And it's very interesting how he analyzed now about why a common man wants to go and sit in, you know, in a movie theater and what he gets out of it. What you have really done is really sort of a takeoff on a satire, for that matter.
That's right.
You know, looking at ourselves in terms of the industry itself.
I got a lot of criticism for that by the industry, by the way.
Is that right?
Yes.
Well, maybe some were defensive about it.
That's right. They're a bit defensive about it.
That's an interesting part. One thing about the Western world is that, you know, people are very open about, you know, self-criticism.
That's
People
right.
are open
we
about...
can laugh at ourselves.
Yeah, and, you know,
That's what it was.
and the comedy has really got its own, you know, sort of, people take it with a pinch of salt.
हेलो अरे देखिए आप उठिए मत आप अरे आपको तो बहुत चोटें लगी हैं तुम चली जाओ यहाँ से आपके कितने महान हैं। आपने मेरा सारा कसूर अपने सर ले लिया।
How did you feel as a filmmaker from India making films in the Western world? What was the main difference in terms of the working atmosphere itself?
Well, you know, the mechanics of cinema, Shan, is the same. You know, I mean, Hollywood has got better technology than we do. But, you know, the day-to-day trials and tribulation of a filmmaker, may he be Spielberg or Mr. Raj Kapoor or Blondie Singh, are pretty much the same. And but there is a little, you know, there's a little more professionalism in Western cinema because they're catering to a global market. Not that we are not. You know, I have said even before that everybody east of Turkey watches Bollywood movies, and everybody west of Turkey watches Hollywood movies. So the demarcation line is still at the crusade line, and that hasn't changed for thousands of years, literally. But the Indian cinema has a potential. After all, you know, cinema is a business, and we have so many factories, as I would say, as I said to CNN in India, that the West could utilize in making product that would be exported to the rest of the world, and so could our own directors and producers, etc. But they say, listen, we've got a good thing going over here. Why should we try and step into something that's beyond our reach? But they have to step out because they have the potential, but they don't have the infrastructure, and they don't have the finances that the West has, because it's backed by banks and loan institutions and so on and so forth. We are not backed by other. We are pretty much an independent organization. What Hollywood used to be in the 20s or 30s, we're still there. And plus our cinema sensibility is also in the 40s and 50s. We still can't get over the musical, because you see, music is a very integral part of Indian cinema, and Mr. Raj Kapoor was the first one to acknowledge that fact, and he was a very good musician himself.
प्यार हुआ, इकरार हुआ है, मेरा जूता है जापानी, ये पतलून इंग्लिस्तानी, की मुस्कुराहटों पे हो निसार, कहता है जोकर सारा ज़माना.
Actually, in my initial studies, I had attended the Ali Akbar School of Music.
I see.
In Fairfax, California, because I thought as a filmmaker, music is an integral part, and especially Indian cinema. And even today, you know, I mean, the film could be A, B, C, D, but if A and B are hit songs, the whole world is going to go see that picture. You know, I mean, is that integral? And music is the language of the soul.
Tell me about the exaggerated melodramatic, you know, aspect of Indian cinema. What's your analysis of this melodrama? Is it because of the fact that the Indian cinema was born out of live stage, not formal performances? There were no microphones in the old days, so people had to shout and speak. And so even today, you know, in cinema, you know, the volume is much higher.
You know, Indians are a very colorful society. We are melodramatic by nature. You know, I mean, we don't do anything quietly. You know, we don't believe in whispering. We believe in shouting. And you know, even when we have to make an announcement, there's in the villages there's a guy with a drum. He's beating a drum. You know, and then there's a guy. You know, either he's
the bugles.
Yeah. I mean, you know, we are a dramatic people, and we don't wear, you know, mundane colors. We wear very colorful clothes. Our speech is very colorful. You know, our poetry, etc., is very colorful. You know, we live to the extreme, basically, and it shows in our films. It shows in our plays. It shows in our politics.
Some critics were, you know, like teasing by saying that in a film, in a conventional film, the so-called box office formula movie, if you see the heroine's father coughing before intermission, you know for sure he's going to die after intermission. So, well, having said that, you know, we move on to another area.
Yes.
About your own background. You know, your great-grandfather, tell me a little bit about him. You know, he started making movies during the silent days in Calcutta, which used to be the center because of East India Trading Corporation and the British presence there.
That's right.
Tell us about this.
Well, you know, his name was Raghubir Singh Bindra, and he started his actually studio in 1904. And it aptly was under the Grand Hotel. And he also had a photo studio up in Darjeeling at that time, and he used to move with the English entourage. You know, when they used to go to Darjeeling, they used to go up there, he used to come down. And it's very funny because in those days, you know, the silent film, and all the films were actually made in a studio like the one we are sitting in, and they'd have backdrops. And one of his films was called Mutiar, and we don't even have the negative of it anymore, you know. And the film dealt with the same subject that Indian cinema is dealing with today, which is, he was a mutiar, which is a village potter, and he fell in love with the rich girl's daughter in the village, and there was a conflict, and the artist and the rich girl, you know, Titanic is touching on the same subject actually. You know, it's made $1 billion, but the basic core of the subject is the same. Women were not allowed to go to cinema in those days. So my great-grandmother, who was very fond of the moving image, as there used to be in those days.
Bioscope, they used to call it.
Yes, that's right. And she was into photography, etc. And she used to tell my grandfather that if you don't bring that film home, you're not going to get any dinner. You know what I mean? So he had to not only play the film at the studio, then he had to bring it home with his friend, the violinist, and there used to be hand projecting at 24 frames or whatever, and the violinist would be playing, and all the girls would be sitting in the living room watching the one-reelers basically.
Right.
And that's how, Indian cinema actually was born about the same time, because the Lumiere brothers in France had made their first commercial film, I think in 1904, about the time, that we have that in common, you and I, Shan, because your father also, was in Calcutta, a little later, and started his own studio, which ended up, by the way, becoming Gemini Studios, and which are, the audience is very aware of. Products were always very ethereal and social and moral, and family was the central focus of them.
What can we expect from a man who had a tremendous background in English literature, world history, and the cinema combined together? What can we expect from Blondie Singh in the coming years?
Kathak dance.
That's another aspect I forgot. Yeah, you're a man of all sort of talent actually.
Yes, I used to do Kathak dance once upon a time. I loved it actually. Shan, I want you to know that I said this on your program, and I'm sure you're going to look the reruns 5 years from now, but you're going to be global. You're going to be global in a few years, and you're going to end up being probably one of the first independent Indian stations that's going to cross over. That's going to cross over from the culture that it was spawned in. You're not, at one stage you're no longer going to be just catering to the so-called Southeast Asian community, but you're going to be catering to the whole masses as a whole, as an alternative television station.
It's exciting,
Yeah, it is very exciting because you're going to be global.
All the
pleasure,
best.
Shan.
It's been a real pleasure having you on the studio with us.
Well, I hope to be here again.
Yeah, we'll look forward to seeing you very, very soon.
Best of luck with your project.
Thank you.
And as I said to the audience again, get ATN.
Thanks.
Get ATN because it's a great show.
Thank you.
It's a great show, and it's a pleasure to be on it and an honor to be on it.
Likewise, a pleasure having you with us.
Thank you very much, Jaya. Thank you very much, Shan.